Hi everybody, welcome to this episode of Android DTV. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about my experience doing a stool test. I used to upload a lot of videos on this channel way back about various GI experiences and tests that I've had done, and then I stopped after a while, and I hadn't uploaded a video in several years, but I had to do a stool test recently as well as a colonoscopy, and so I figured I would make videos about that. The colonoscopy is going to be a separate video, but this video is going to be about my experience doing a stool test. Just tips and tricks I picked up along the way, like things I would do differently if I had to do it over again, just so that like if you've never done a stool test, these might be able to just kind of help you out and you can learn from some of my mistakes, I guess. I'll also try to link the playlist of the other GI videos that I've done somewhere so that you can go and have a look at those if you're interested. But like I said, in today's video specifically, we're going to be talking about doing a stool test. And like these tests can probably vary. Like I've never done a stool test before, so I don't know. This was the only one I ever did. But I imagine that stool tests vary from person to person depending on what your doctor has ordered and that kind of thing. So this is just based on my experience. So your doctor's probably going to tell you where to get the stool test done, and it's a kit that you have to pick up. So you could either probably order it from somewhere or pick it up from a lab center somewhere or like your local doctor's office, hospital, whatever. So wherever your doctor tells you to get it from, you know, pick it up from there. But I specifically got mine from Quest Diagnostics. I'm from the US, so I got mine from Quest Diagnostics. And just a little tip with that, if you're getting it from Quest, you don't need an appointment to pick up the test, but like there's no front desk people or anything when you get there. So what you do to pick up the test, this is like something that I didn't know. So this is like one of those tips that I was talking about, like things I would do differently next time, or just a little trick to help other people, is that when you get to, if you're picking it up from Quest, go to the electronic kiosk that they have and hit the help button, and there's an option that says I'm picking up a test, and then somebody will come out and get you. So I like had no idea about that, and I just like said that I was a walk-in appointment. So definitely don't do like a walk-in appointment because it could be forever until they get to you. But you also don't need to schedule an actual appointment to pick up the test. This is not one of those tests where they expect you to do it in the office like you would with like a urine test. You could do that there, or a blood test or something like that. This is a test, this is a take-home test because it would be very difficult to try to do it like in the office. So this is a kit that you pick up, or like I said, you might be able to like order it from somewhere. But if you're going to Quest, just go to the electronic kiosk and hit the help button for somebody to come and get you. Also make sure that wherever you're going that you bring the printed doctor's order with you so that they can see what the test is and like what exactly they need to give you. Because like I said, it could vary from test to test. Like how many vials and stuff they need to give you, or like specifically what they need to give you. They might be able to look it up electronically as well, but I would just bring the printed order if you have it, just to be on the safe side. So what happens is somebody will come out and bring you into a room, and they should explain the directions to you, because it was honestly a lot more complicated than I thought it was going to be. Like I thought you were just going to like, you know, go in this little container and then send it off and that would be it. But it was so much more complicated than that. So they're going to explain all the instructions to you and make sure that you listen carefully, or like write things down if you think you're going to forget. I don't think it actually comes with directions. I could be misremembering, but I'm not sure if it actually comes with printed directions or not. So like if you have any issues with like being able to understand like the native language, or like if you're hard of hearing or have trouble remembering, like maybe bring somebody with you, or ask them to like, maybe they have a printout of directions they can give you, or a translation of directions. Like I would definitely make sure that you're able to like write these things down if you think you're going to forget them or not understand them, and definitely be sure to ask them clarifying questions as well if they're explaining things and it's like not making sense to you, because you do have to pay for this test. Like I don't think, like again, speaking from the US, most insurance companies probably don't cover the entire cost of the test. Mine cost $98, but it could vary, like again, depending on where you're from, where you're getting it done, what, like how comprehensive the test is, what your insurance covers and doesn't cover. So that's just, again, my experience. This was $98. So this is definitely not something that you want to have to do over again, considering that you have to pay for it, you have to go pick it up, you have to do it, you have to drop it off. You know, that's not a thing you want to have to repeat because you did it incorrectly. So definitely don't be afraid to like, you know, ask them to write these things down, or like type stuff in your notes, or maybe even like ask if you can like record the conversation on your phone, or bring somebody with you, especially if you need like an interpreter or something like that. So definitely don't be afraid to do those things. Like I said, some tests probably vary. Like I wouldn't know because this is the only stool test I've ever done. So what they need to give you and like the directions you need to follow might vary depending on the type of test that you need to have done or how comprehensive it is. But for my test specifically, it was a pretty comprehensive stool test, and I had to fill a bunch of temperature-based vials. I think it was maybe something like 7 or 8 different vials, and some of them were temperature controlled. Like some of them had to be room temperature, some of them had to be stored in the freezer, and some had to be stored in the refrigerator. But again, yours could be different. But just make sure that you pay attention to those instructions, because if they tell you like, yeah, there's different, ones that have to go like be stored in different areas, make sure that you pay attention to that. So what's going to happen is they give you they call it a hat because it looks like a hat. It's a plastic hat that you go in, and this is what you'll collect the samples out of. And what you have to do is you have to lift the entire lid of the toilet, like not just the like top lid, but the seat as well. Like you have to lift all of that, like the whole thing up, and put the hat onto the seat. And that's what you'll go in. And I will say it might be a little bit more difficult to go this way just because you're like kind of like sitting more upright than you would be, because the hat, it's not super bulky. Like it fits on the toilet. Like it should fit on your toilet very well. But like I just know for me it was a little bit more like I was kind of like raised up instead of being like, sitting down more. So you might find it a little more difficult to like go in that position, but just do what you can to make it work. And also, the other thing that's very important that they will tell you is to try not to pee in the stool sample, because that could mess with the results. Like, it might be a little bit difficult not to, because, like, sometimes that just happens. So, just do your best. Like I think what I did was I just tried to make sure I peed beforehand, so that way, like, I wouldn't have to go at the time that I was doing the test. As far as I know, you can take samples at any time of the day, as long as you think, like, when you're doing it, that's, like, when you'll get your best sample. The vials really don't need that much. Like, even though there might be a lot of them you have to fill, they each individually don't need a ton of the sample. So don't be afraid about don't be afraid about not having enough, because I think that's another thing. Like, I was concerned about not having enough. But you will. I think if you have like a normal bowel movement, like if you typically go in the morning, or you typically go in the afternoon, or whenever your typical time is that you go, you should be able to get a pretty decent sample. And as far as I know as well, there's no specific dietary requirements about what you're allowed to eat and not eat beforehand, unless your doctor, of course, says specifically something that you can or can't have beforehand. As far as how long you can expect to spend doing the test, it depends how long it takes you to actually like go, and then how long it takes you to scoop everything into all the vials. But it takes maybe like 15 to 30 minutes depending on how quickly you can do it. Make sure that you're gonna make sure to do it at a time where you won't be interrupted, because it's a time sensitive process, because again, you have like this stool that's like sitting exposed, and it needs to go in these different vials, and then it needs to go in their proper temperature controlled areas. So this isn't something that you want to do and you get interrupted in the middle of it and go off and do something else, and you leave it and then come back. Like, you definitely don't want to be doing that. So make sure, like, if you have kids or pets or something like that, make sure that you are doing this at a time when like maybe nobody else is home, or like they're down for a nap or something, like something that like sometime when you won't be in a rush. Like, I wouldn't try to do it before going to work or something like that. If you're like planning on leaving the house, I wouldn't try to get it done when you're like on your way out or something. I would like make sure to set aside time to do this when like maybe no one else is home or nobody else will be interrupting you. This is definitely the kind of thing that you'll want to like do it relatively quickly, because it definitely is kind of a gross process, and like it smells, and like I said, you have it out and everything. It's not like it's not the kind of thing that you want to just like leave sitting out for as long as possible. Like I said, it's kind of like a disgusting process that you just kind of like want to do it and get it over with as quickly as possible. So once you've gone in the hat, then what you do is you take it and you put it on your bathroom counter, and you scoop samples into each of the vials that they've given you. So the vials have little scoops on the end. Like when you pull the cap out, there's a scoop already built into it to help you do that, so you don't have to worry about like how you're going to do that. It's built into it. Another important tip is to make sure you don't mix up the vials, because like I said, some, depending on the kind of test that you're doing, some might be temperature controlled. They should designate with very clear labels about which ones should be frozen, refrigerated, or kept at room temperature. Like, they're all like very clearly marked about which ones are which, and they each come in their own separate baggies. So definitely make sure you don't like, the way that I did it was like I did all the room temperature ones and like put them in their bags, set it aside. And then all the frozen ones, did them all, set them aside. Like, don't, mix them all up or anything. Like, do them all, like, kind of one at a time type of thing. And, like, when you're done with, like, a set, then set it aside so that you don't mix them up. So, like I said, the vials have the built-in scooper things to kind of help you do this. And, like I said, they don't need a lot to fill. And they should be marked with a fill line. So there should be a little line that tells you where to fill. If you end up putting a little more in than it asks for, I don't think it makes a difference. I think it's better to overfill than to, like, underfill. Also, I noticed that, at least with mine, the room temperature vials contained a red liquid solution. I forget exactly what it was for, but I think it was just something that probably helped it to stay at the right temperature, or, something like that. Be sure to try not to spill any. I don't know what happens if you spill some, like maybe it messes with the results, or it tampers with the sample in some way. Like, I'm not sure, so just be careful not to spill the solution out of that. The other two, the frozen one and the refrigerated ones, didn't have any solution in them. They should also, like, when they're giving you the kit, they should give you disposable latex gloves, but if they don't, definitely be sure to buy some. You can find them at pretty much any, like, grocery store or drugstore, because you will definitely need them. Like, I would not advise doing this without some kind of gloves. If you're allergic to latex, you might be able to find an alternative kind of, like, disposable glove, but I would definitely do this. Like, I would not do this with my bare hands, because it definitely does tend to, like, I did get a little bit on the gloves at one point, so I was really glad that I had them, because, like, you're trying to do this kind of quickly as well, so yeah, you might end up, like, getting a little bit on your hands or something, so definitely make sure to wear gloves when doing this. And they didn't mention this to me when I picked up the kit. I just kind of thought of it myself afterwards, like, before I went to go do the test. I was like, I'm gonna wear a mask while doing this, because it might just kind of help to hide the smell a little bit, especially if your stool is malodorous. Like, presumably a lot of people that might be doing the stool test, you might be doing it because you have an issue with your stool, and that could include the fact that it, like, maybe smells especially bad. So if you're worried about the smell, I would definitely wear some kind of disposable mask, like whether it's a paper mask or, like, the cloth masks that we wore during COVID. Like, I would wear some kind of like, it didn't completely hide the smell, but it definitely helped. So I would definitely wear a mask while doing this as well, especially if you're afraid about the smell. I would also say, like, another tip, this is kind of something that I learned after the fact, is if you don't have a lot of counter space in your bathroom, like, I have a very small bathroom sink, like, I don't have a lot of counter space in my bathroom. So if you don't have a lot of counter space, instead of putting it on the counter, I would put it in the sink. When collecting the samples, because what happened to me is that I had it resting on the counter, and then I accidentally knocked it into the sink when I was trying to, like, get a sample out. I accidentally knocked it with my elbow or something into the sink, and luckily none of it spilled, but that could definitely happen. Like, you don't want to risk spilling any of the sample, especially into your sink. It's like, it's not supposed to go there. And also, like, what happened too was, like, because the motion, like, knocked the vial I was holding, and some of the red solution spilled out, and luckily it wasn't, like, enough to really make a difference, but like, there was still plenty of it in there. But you just don't want to risk spilling any of the sample, or spilling any of, like, the solutions or anything out of the vials. If you have a sensitive stomach, I would try, like, humming to yourself. Like, humming kind of suppresses your gag reflex, because definitely, like, if you have a sensitive stomach, you probably will gag from trying to do this, like, either between the smell or just the whole process in general is, like, pretty disgusting. You'll probably be inclined to gag while doing this, but I just found that, like, humming to myself not only kind of distracts your mind because you're, like, thinking about a song, but it also does suppress your gag reflex, so that is something to try if you're afraid about, like, gagging while trying to do this. If you have, like, kids or pets, you might be more used to this kind of thing, so maybe it won't bother you as much. I would say that it's definitely gross. Like, I don't have kids, and when I did have a pet, like, I didn't really have to deal with the poop too much. So I'm not, like, mega used to dealing with this kind of thing, and so it was definitely gross, but even I, like, didn't really, like, I have a sensitive stomach and everything, and I didn't really get that grossed out. Like, I got grossed out doing it, but it was very manageable. Like, I was still able to complete the test. Another tip that I would have, and this is something, again, that I learned after the fact from doing it, is that I would have a garbage bag ready to go to dispose of the hat when you're done collecting the samples. You definitely don't want to put this in with your regular trash, because there might be some remaining stool on it, and this is a biohazard, so you don't want to just, like, have it in with your normal trash, and especially if you're not planning on taking out your trash right away. Like, this is not something that you want sitting around. So it should be thrown away in a separate trash bag and thrown away, like, to the dumpster immediately. What I tried to do is I tried scooping the remaining stool into the toilet, and then I was going to flush it, but it was, like, very messy, I couldn't get it all out. It was very messy. It honestly was not worth it. So you're honestly better off, like, if you're trying to, like, be economical or something about it, or, like, eco-friendly by, like, saving a trash bag, it's honestly not worth it. Just dispose of the hat with any remaining stool in it, or even if there isn't any, just dispose of it in a separate trash bag and throw it in the dumpster immediately, because it is a biohazard and you don't want it just laying around. This also goes without saying, but just as a reminder to keep the vials out of reach of any children or pets, make sure that anyone in your household is aware that you'll have vials stored in the fridge or the freezer, and instruct them not to remove them. So again, like, kids or pets can get into stuff, so, like, make sure that nobody touches these. Just make sure that if you have other people living in your household with you, that just, like, notify them, like, hey, I'm gonna have some vials in the fridge or the freezer, so, like, please don't take them out and, like, leave them or anything. Like, don't move them. If you're really grossed out about the idea of having these vials of your own poop mixed in with where you keep your food, like I was, what I did was I hid them in their little baggies, and I put them, like, towards the back, or maybe I hid them behind a box of some kind of food or something, just so that I wouldn't see them every time I opened the fridge or the freezer. What I did with the room temperature ones is they gave me everything in a big paper bag, and so I just put the room temperature vials in the bag and just left the bag in my bedroom. As far as I know, like, don't quote me on this, but this is what the, like, lab technician told me, is that samples can be stored for up to 2 weeks. But I would honestly probably try to return it to the lab within 24 hours if you're able to do so, because, I mean, just who wants that, sitting in their freezer for 2 weeks? And if you want to do the test within the same day of collecting the samples, you can. But what the lab technician told me is that you're required to collect the sample and return it to the lab within 1 hour. And he said it's actually better to just let it sit at its proper temperatures for at least 24 hours. So, like, you can do it within the same day, but unless you think you're going to be able to get to the lab within 1 hour, you probably don't want a chance doing that. And like I said, I think it's actually better to let them sit at their proper temperatures for 24 hours first. And if you're returning it to a Quest lab, again, like, I went to Quest, so if you picked up the test from Quest and you're returning it to a Quest lab, in order to return it, what you do is, again, you go to the electronic kiosk and you click the help button again, and there should be an option to say that you're dropping off a test. So again, you don't need to make an appointment for this. And I would definitely not say that you're a walk-in appointment, because they might not get to you for a while, and you don't want to be, like, sitting there with this test that you're ready to drop off. So what will happen is someone will bring you into a room and they'll collect the bag with the completed test kit, and they'll ask for identifying information like your name and your birthday, insurance info if that's applicable, and they might also ask you how many vials are in the test kit. That might just be to verify, like, make sure they have all of them. So maybe make sure to count them just in case they ask for how many vials there are. And also make sure to tell them if anything happened while you did the test, like if you accidentally got urine in the sample or if you spilled any of the solution, because it might affect the results. And depending on, like, what happened, they might say, oh, you know what, we probably suggest you do this again then. Or I guess, like, depending on what you tell them, if they're like, oh yeah, that's fine, like, if you got a little bit in there, like, that's fine, it probably won't make a difference, but at least they'll know, just in case something weird comes up when they're doing the results, that they already are aware of that. So overall, like, my overall experience with doing it, like, it's definitely not a pleasant experience. It's definitely pretty disgusting. And honestly, like I said, it was a lot more complicated than I thought it was going to be. Like, I thought it was just as simple as, like, you poop in the container and then you send it off somewhere, but it was a lot more complicated than that because of all the temperature vial. Like, there were so many different vials you had to fill, and then you had to store them in different places, and it was definitely a lot more complicated than I was expecting it to be. It's relatively simple and easy and doesn't take a terribly long time to do. You basically just need 24 hours for everything to, like, kind of set and then bring it back. So I would definitely recommend doing it. Like, you know, it sounds like when your doctor says, hey, can you do a stool test? And you're probably thinking, like, this is going to be disgusting, and I don't know how to do it or don't know what to do. It's really not that bad overall. Again, not an experience I really want to do every week if I can avoid it. But, you know, every once in a while, like, if I had to do it again, it would be okay. And like I said, there was a few tips I learned along the way about, like, oh, I would probably do this differently next time. So I really hope that these tips have helped you and just kind of put your mind at ease if you were like, I really don't know what to expect. I don't know what to do. I don't know if I want to do this test. It's definitely worth it to do. Like I said, it might cost you a little bit. Might cost you like around $100 or something to do it, depending on where you go and what your insurance is like and everything. But, you know, like basically what they ended up finding from my test is that like everything was normal, but I had an elevated level of calprotectin in my stool, which meant that like my doctor was then like, okay, you have inflammation in your colon, and that's why they ordered me to then go do a colonoscopy, which I'm going to make another video about that if you'd like to see that as well. That's why it's so important to do the test, because you just never know what they're going to find. It's a relatively simple and quick process to find out, like, you know, this could potentially save your life, or maybe if you've been having some issues, it could, you know, give you some answers about like what's going on. So like I said, I hope that these tips have helped you, and that it'll just put your mind at ease about doing the test. And like I said, if you'd like to see any of my other videos about any other tests that I've had done, like for GI issues and that kind of thing, I'll try to link it somewhere so that you can go and have a look at that. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope, again, that this video has helped you. And if you have to have a stool test, then, you know, I just hope that, like I said, when you're doing the stool test, just think about like why you're doing it, and that it's for the overall benefit of your health. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in another video.